All right, today we're cracking open one of the most fascinating prophecies from the prophet Ezekiel. Seriously, it's like a political thriller, but it's wrapped up in this incredible riddle about eagles and trees. And believe it or not, this strange story explains the fall of an entire kingdom. Let's get right into it. So, we're diving straight into a 2,600-year-old mystery. The prophet hits us with this really vivid image, right? A huge, powerful eagle swoops down on Lebanon, goes to a giant cedar tree, and just snaps off the very top shoot. It sounds like something you'd see on a nature channel, but trust me, every single word here is packed with political meaning. So, you have to ask, what is this all about? This wasn't just some story Ezekiel was telling to pass the time. For his audience, Israelites living as exiles in Babylon, this was a coded message. It was about their reality, a story of rebellion, a sacred promise being broken, and the absolute downfall of their very last king. Okay, so the riddle continues. After the eagle breaks off the top of the tree, it takes a seed and plants it in some really good soil. But here's the thing, it doesn't grow into another huge tree. Nope, it grows into a low, sprawling vine, and its branches are reaching back towards the eagle that planted it. It's a perfect picture of dependency. And right here, this is the twist. This is the moment everything changes. The vine, which should be loyal to the one who planted it, suddenly turns its attention, its very roots, to a new rival eagle. This single act of betrayal, this shift in allegiance, is what kicks off the entire catastrophe. Okay, so to really get what's happening, we need the decoder key for these symbols. And for Ezekiel's original audience, the Jewish prisoners of war in Babylon, these metaphors would have been crystal clear. They weren't just hearing a story, they were living it. And here it is. This is our decoder ring. The first great eagle? That's King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, the superpower of the day. The treetop he snaps off? That's Judah's king, Jehoiachin. The seed he plants to replace him, the vine? That's the new puppet king, Zedekiah. And that second eagle that shows up? Well, that's the Pharaoh of Egypt, Babylon's biggest rival. And this timeline just shows you how fast this all went down. In 597 BCE, Babylon yanks one king out and puts Zedekiah on the throne. And for a little while, things are kind of stable. But then Zedekiah, the vine, makes a terrible decision. He reaches out to Egypt, the second eagle, hoping to break free. And that gamble? It backfired. Spectacularly. It led directly to the total destruction of Jerusalem. So why was this rebellion such a disaster in Ezekiel's eyes? I mean, from a political standpoint, you get it, right? Trying to get out from under a global superpower. But for the prophet, this was about so much more than bad politics. This was about a sacred promise that had been completely shattered. See, when Nebuchadnezzar made Zedekiah king, he put him under what was called a vassal treaty. And to seal that deal, Zedekiah had to swear a solemn oath of loyalty. But here's the kicker. He swore it in the name of his own God, Yahweh, the God of Israel. He basically said, I swear by my God, I will be faithful to you. This is the heart of the issue for Ezekiel. He's saying, look, this wasn't just about double-crossing Nebuchadnezzar. No, it was way worse. Zedekiah had treated God's holy name like it was nothing. He used it to guarantee a promise that he had absolutely no intention of keeping. And the judgment that comes down is just absolute. For Ezekiel, this was the last straw. The king, who was supposed to represent the entire nation, what Ezekiel calls the rebellious house of Judah, had dragged God's name through the mud. And for that, there was going to be no escape. The fate of the entire kingdom was sealed. But just when the story feels like it's hit rock bottom, total judgment, no way out, the prophecy takes this incredible turn. The final verses of the chapter use the exact same metaphor of the cedar tree, but this time, it's not a human king doing the planting. It sets up this amazing contrast. You have the earthly king, Nebuchadnezzar, meddling with the royal family for his own political gain, and it just leads to ruin. But then God says, okay, now it's my turn. He promises that he will take a little sprig from that same royal cedar, from the line of David, and plant it where it truly belongs. And this new tree isn't going to be some low, dependent vine. No, it's going to grow into a magnificent, noble cedar. It'll be a symbol of a restored kingdom, a place of shelter for everyone. It's pretty clear that this part of the prophecy, which was probably added after Jerusalem fell, completely transforms a message of judgment into this long-term, powerful vision of hope. Now, before we get too comfortable in that hope, Ezekiel yanks us back to the grim reality in chapter 19. He uses a new metaphor, and the tone is just much sadder, much more final. This one isn't a riddle to be figured out. It's a funeral song. What Ezekiel does here is so powerful. He uses a form of poetry called a prophetic lament. He's not just predicting the end of the monarchy, he's singing its funeral song before it's even dead. It's a way of saying the coming disaster is so certain, so inevitable, we might as well mourn it now. So the new metaphor is a lioness. That's the royal family of David, and her cubs, who are the last kings of Judah. But these powerful lions, they don't get to rule. One by one, they're captured. The first one is dragged off to Egypt, and the last one, he's trapped in a pit and hauled away in chains to Babylon. And this final line about the last lion cub, the last king, it's just haunting. It marks the definitive, tragic end. For the exiles listening to this, it would have just crushed any false hope they had that things might somehow go back to the way they were. So you have to put yourself in their shoes. Hearing these prophecies for the first time in Babylon, it was a confirmation of their absolute worst fears. It was a harsh, brutal dose of reality, basically telling them, your king is going to fail and our nation is going to fall. But then, after it all happened, after 587 BCE, after the city was just a pile of rubble, these same words started to mean something different. They became this powerful elegy, a way to mourn for a lost kingdom, and a stark, unforgettable lesson in what happens when faith is broken. And that's what's so incredible about Ezekiel's message, isn't it? How its single, devastating story about political failure and divine judgment can, at the same time, hold this tiny, planted seed of future restoration. It shows us that even in the face of what looks like total, absolute ruin, the story was not completely over.